name is Mama T. I'm the Community Outreach Team Leader and Event Coordinator for Down to Earth. I hope you're enjoying the wonderful samples that we're providing you tonight. Some of you ate dinner beforehand, and I'm sorry that we didn't make it more well known so that you could come hungrier. But if you are still hungry, there's more back there too. So we have a very special evening with two very special guests tonight. One of our long-standing partnerships is with Seeds of Truth, Dr. Yi. We are really, really blessed to have these workshops and lectures that we coordinate with Seeds of Truth to bring information and knowledge to our community, especially here in Hawaii, where we are at ground zero for GMO crops and pesticides. All of this is very relevant news to our island community and our INA. So I'm glad that you took time to come to learn about this. It's a very important information. We also have Dr. Stephanie Seneff, all the way from MIT, with over 152 peer reviews of reports on glyphosate and the ties to degenerative diseases and autism. So we're really, really thankful that she's coming here to share her knowledge with us. And now I would like for you to please join me in welcoming these two wonderful, manaful women to our stage tonight. Thank you.
Hello everybody, how are you this evening? My name is Dr. Melissa Yi, and I'm happy actually to be in this room because probably about 5 years ago we had one of our first seminars talking to people about our concern about GMO and what's happening here in Hawaii at Ground Zero. And so now we've come full circle back to this beautiful place. And I want to thank Mo'iliili Community Center as well as Down to Earth and MOA Hawaii and all the other people who are supporting us over the years that we've been involved in this movement. My background is I'm an acupuncturist, a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine. I'm a very hands-on person. I'm a healthcare practitioner, and I've been doing this kind of work for over 25 years. And what I'm going to share with you today is not going to be science. I'm going to leave that to Dr. Seneff to do. And I'm not a farmer either, so I wouldn't say I have a black thumb, but I'm definitely moving in the direction of growing my own food. And it's as a result of seeing how desperately we need to become self-sufficient here that I feel that each and every one of you needs to be activated today. And so therefore we're holding these seminars, and that's our goal this year as Seeds of Truth, to continue our educational process and coming out to the communities and talking to people about why they really should be very, very concerned about what's happening here in Hawaii. We were hoping that from when we began just about 6 years ago talking about GMO, and at that point I knew nothing about GMO. I didn't even know what the words meant. And so we've come till today where we're seeing that the counties, the Kauai County, Maui County, and Hawaii County are being very, very proactive in defending themselves against this barrage of chemicals. And every time that they've attempted to pass a resolution on their island to bring that to the city council, which would then be taken to the state legislature, which just began its session on Wednesday this past week, the city council stalled it and would not take it up. They said, who are you guys? What do you stand for? Are you about labeling? Are you about banning? What is GMO? Why should we even be worried about it? So nothing has ever happened here in Honolulu or in the state legislature. And we're going to have to see how things go this year in the legislature, whether we will get a bill to ban pesticides, to give notice about what is being used, disclosure, or whether we will not have anything at all. We can't say. It doesn't look very promising because many of the politicians who have been in place for the last 20, 30 years are still there. And we did our very darndest to get new people in, but it's a long process with regards to the political process. And therefore, by people becoming more and more educated about this topic, we will eventually see good politicians in place who can make good laws. So today I'm going to talk to you about my story. Who am I? Why am I doing this? And I don't want to talk about myself so much because it's not about me. It's really about the process of becoming activated. And I know in the media, they try to vilify people like you and me as activists or crazies or emotional people who really don't have the facts down. We're not following science. But I want to inform you that I have a background in caring for people, and I really feel that all of us need to become better informed about what's happening. So that's why I'm volunteering my time, and I wake up every morning full of joy and vigor, because I really feel this is a very fulfilling mission that many of us have, to be bringing this information to you and hopefully activating you to become involved in your own way. And everybody becomes involved, so it's a community involvement. And some of it called activism, which has a very negative connotation, but for me it's really about being concerned about the community and making a difference. So for each person, there can come a life-changing event. Maybe somebody you know has cancer, maybe somebody you know dies, maybe your child has autism or special needs or allergies or asthma. And you want to know, how come? What did I do that it came to this point? And at that point, maybe that's when you start opening your eyes and start questioning and start doing your own research. And inevitably, it comes back to chemicals. So Dr. Seneff is going to be talking a lot about her concern about what Roundup is doing to our society and all the diseases it's causing. But I'm going to start from my very beginning, which is that I was born here in Hawaii. My great-grandparents came here from China in the mid-1800s, and they came seeking a better life, as many of you who are here today are feeling that your ancestors made that sacrifice to come here because they wanted to provide not only for their family, but for generations to come. And we were a working-class family, a middle-class family, but my parents really put the emphasis on education. And being Chinese, of course, he felt that I got to get my kids in the best school, and so he chose Punahou for us. So I have two sisters, and we went to Punahou. So a lot of people will say, oh, Punahou, you know, those people, they're all rich. But I was very lucky to be able to go to that school, and my brother went to Iolani. And they've made a lot of sacrifices for us to be able to get through school. And it wasn't about going into the corporate world, because we were a working class family. We had to find our own niche in life. We had to find how we could give back to the community. And it took me many, many years to come to terms with my education at Punahou and how I could apply it with the skills that I had and give back to the community in a way that was gratifying to me. And so now at my age, I have a 50-year reunion coming up soon. And I feel very fortunate that I'm healthy enough to be able to share with the community what I'm doing and hopefully be making a difference. So I am also Kekeoka'aina. All of you are Kekeoka'aina. You live here. You care about this place. Your ancestors came here, and you are here now because you love this place, whether it's for the climate, for the people, whatever your reason, but you're here because you love this place. And unfortunately, we are in a crisis. We've been so complacent for so long, because when you get disillusioned or when you get involved in the beauty of this place, you forget about how things are actually getting worse. And each day that passes, we are in a worse and worse situation. And I just want to know, from a show of hands, just to begin with, how many of you know nothing about GMO or just know very little? Could you just raise your hands? Okay, to see where we're coming from. Okay, good. I'm glad you're honest. Because, like I said, 6 years ago, I didn't even know what GMO was. And I jumped into this full-headed, thinking, well, I'm going to get educated and I'm going to educate people. And that's my commitment even to today. But before I even started 6 years ago, when I returned to Hawaii after living overseas for many years, where we were actually very aware of recycling and not using plastic bags and taking care of the environment. Coming back to Hawaii, I was so disappointed to see that people gave a rip. You know, they just assumed, well, the city and county guys are going to take care of it. I don't have to do anything. So people were very passive and complacent and lazy. And so through my education overseas, I came back in 1991, and what I found was that there was an election going on. So how many of you remember in 1992 when Fossey and Cayetano were running for governor? Okay, so how many of you thought that Fossey would win? Okay, actually, he should have won. And that was the opinion at the time. The unions were betting on him. The bookmakers in Chinatown were saying he's going to win, but he didn't. And I jumped into it, and I didn't know anything about election fraud or vote fraud, but I had read a book called Vote Fraud in America, and that book said to me, it's going on, and you better be aware of it. And so, without knowing anything, I just got to be very familiar with the voting process, with the political process. I got to know Mr. Fossey, and not that I supported him because I knew his history, but I really felt that if indeed he was robbed of his desire to serve this community, what else is going on? So we got to know people down at the Office of Elections, and we devoted about 3 years of our lives to finding what was going on. And so we formed the Citizens Committee for Voter Integrity, and some of you remember those times, that we went down and we asked questions of the Office of Elections, and they wouldn't give us answers. They really did not want us to ever access those ballots, because the way the law is set up, you have to go to court. And we wanted to see if we could find enough evidence to at least get halfway with that. What we found in talking to the former director of the Office of Elections was that there were a lot of irregularities, a lot of discrepancies. And he was so concerned that he actually went to the FBI and reported to them. And the FBI said to him, I'm not going to do anything. So, what does that mean? So some people were in the know about what was going on. And we decided, okay, so besides knowing this, what can we do practically? We eventually, I think in 1994, went down to the state capitol on election night, and we're trying to count ballots. And that was a very difficult process, and it was actually starting to get very dangerous. We were offered to buy an independent ballot counting machine to support what we're trying to do. But as I said, it was starting to get dangerous, and we could feel that in the air, because we were getting close to something that people did not want us to know about. So we backed off from that, and I can see you nodding your head, because I think you're in agreement that something went wrong in that election. And it's probably been going on longer, and there are people who have said that if you really knew what's happening in the election process, you would have a revolution. But my friend Jack DeFeo here has told me about another book called Hacking Our Democracy. So if you're taking notes, please check out this book, Hacking Our Democracy. Because if you see all the cyber wars going on right now, it's very possible that this was going on back 20, 30 years ago. And people don't want to talk about this because they think we can trust our government, we can trust the process. But I think more and more of you are becoming disillusioned that it is not so. So after being involved in that, we decided, okay, we're going to take a little break. But then about the late 1990s, we heard that the Department of Health and the Center for Food Safety was going to start pushing fluoridation. So how many of you here think that fluoridation is a good thing? Please raise your hand. Okay, I'm glad we're in agreement on that.
We have an Akamai audience here.
So I came back in the 1990s, but I found out that there was a movement actually, and it was older people like Thelma Martindale and David Watermull that had engaged their monies and their time to actually stop fluoridation and inform the public that it wasn't a good thing. But then things got kind of put on the back burner. And when I started to get involved in about 1998, I said, again, we got to go out and educate the people because they don't know about fluoride. I always thought fluoride prevents tooth decay, but I'm learning the process now that it has nothing to do with health. It's all about recycling a toxic waste product. So for 4 years, we engaged in the educational process. And we went to Rotary clubs, and we went to health fairs, and we talked to people, we got petition signatures, and eventually it got to the point that actually the state legislature took it on to introduce a bill to fluoridate the water. And we came up with our testimony, and we actually exposed that the Department of Health knew very well that children on Molokai had been exposed to fluoride for a period of about 5 years. And instead of reducing the tooth decay in that time, actually the tooth decay went up. So they covered up this evidence, and they had written a document that they were very concerned that anti-fluoridationists would get a hold of this information and expose it, which we did. And so this was not good for what they were trying to promote, and they kind of backed off. But after the state legislature said, and I think it was Lingle said, this is a county matter, we were actually able to enlist the help of, if you remember, Rod Tam, who has such a taint in the society right now, but he was actually our champion. In the city council, when he was serving there, he actually took it on to pass an ordinance. And even Jeremy Harris, remember Jeremy Harris? Poor guy, we laugh at him, but he actually passed that, he signed that ordinance into law in 2004. And this all kind of went under the radar. You know, people weren't really aware that this was happening, and this was certainly to our advantage. So we got this bill passed, Bill 66, and it stands as law now. So we are one of 2 big cities in the United States that do not have fluoridated water. So, I mean, I'm sure most of you still do use fluoride toothpaste. I don't. But for those of you who still think fluoride has some benefits, you know, you can do that. That's your freedom of choice. But what our emphasis was in doing this campaign, originally looking like anti-fluoridation, we changed it to a positive message, which was pro-pure water. And even the logo of the Board of Water Supply was pure water, right? So everybody could get with that, whether it was politicians or whether it was state officials or dentists. They took a more neutral stand because they realized we need to have informed consent. And when you put it in the water as a medication, you are not allowing the people to have a choice. So we got people to support us, and therefore, to this very day, that bill and that ordinance stands. And every time the state legislature tries to bring it up again, the people start calling in masses and saying, we do not want fluoride in our water. And they back off because we got to get rid of the waste product, but we're not going to dump it in our water. So that's another thing that I was involved in. So whether you call it community involvement or activism, it's coming from a commitment in my heart that it's really important that we do something. And as I said before, we are in a crisis. So we've come to the point in 2015 that it's post-election time. Many of the same people are back in office. Many young people actually stood up and said, I'll run for office, I'll try to make a change. But going back to what I said about the voting process, you know, the computer voting process, is it tainted or not? We don't know to what extent it is, but I do believe it is, and that's why I am very disillusioned about what's happening, you know, in our city and our state and federal government, because I believe it's been compromised. But the great miracle is that on Maui, there was actually a ballot initiative that was taken on by some very, very vigorous people who said, you know, these initiatives across the states to label GMO is not happening. Money comes in and taints the election or the attempt to get a bill passed to label GMOs, and so it goes nowhere. And as we saw with the Oregon election, that they actually lost by 800 votes because there were about 4,000 votes that were, and Oregon is an absentee ballot election. So nobody goes down to the polls there anymore. They have figured out that the way you're going to steal an election is through absentee ballots. And so, okay, it's great people go and vote and turn in their ballot, but how about those 4,000 questionable ballots that really could have made the difference to start us on the process of labeling GMO? But they took it to court, they asked for a recount, they got down to 800 votes to the favor of not labeling, but there were these 4,000 votes that the judge refused to look at because she said it would take too much time. So we lost out there, but the fact that the companies put so much money into advertising shows that they are actually desperate. So there may actually be some spies here tonight, but I really welcome you for being here because you need to get educated too about what's happening here in our state, in our county, as well as the federal government. Across this nation, people are waking up. And I'm really, really proud to be a part of that awakening process. So with regards to what happened in Oregon, that's a pity. But what Maui did was really phenomenal. They said, we're going to take another approach. We're going to ban GMO. We're going to ask for disclosure to show whether or not this stuff is safe. And they cannot answer that it's safe because it's not. So therefore, after we won that election by 1,077 votes, at the very last minute, you know, I'd already gone to bed and said, oh, it's a done deal, we lost. And a friend of mine called me on the phone and he left a message and he said, we won. And that was really, really wonderful to wake up to that actually the people had turned it around. And so many of us are still celebrating that victory because we took a new approach, which is to ban GMO.
Yep.
And that will be the way we have to go in the future. Okay, so I was talking about vote fraud, so we know also about election fraud. With regards to political contributions that are being given to a certain amount of people. And Seeds of Truth was one of the first groups that actually put out a financial audit based upon limited information. But it was only about 30 people, always from the very beginning of when GMOs came to Hawaii, who were getting the campaign contributions to stay quiet and to put out the laws and to support what the GMO companies were doing here in Hawaii. And Babes Against Biotech has done a very good job of compiling all the data from this past year and showing, again, the same 30 people who are really controlling the Senate and the representatives in the state legislature. And we know who they are, and eventually we will get them out. But it's a long, long process. And in the meantime, we cannot wait for the lawsuits to be resolved. We cannot wait for new politicians to come in. We have to start today. How many of you have seen the documentary Islands of Risk? Okay. You know, all the people who are in that documentary are now white-haired like me. We worried so much about this situation and put so much energy into it that time is passing. But we really feel that this will happen in our lifetime, that we will actually be able to get rid of these chemical companies. So let's start from the very beginning. Some of you don't even know what GMO is. Okay, so very basically, and Stephanie will touch on it, GMOs are a process which was developed in the 1970s or so, where a gene from one species was taken and inserted into another species. So, for example, a fish gene was inserted into a tomato, or you've heard about the salmon, where it's been crossbred with a trout. Things that have never happened in nature are things that this pseudoscience is promoting. And many people who will counter us will say, yeah, but this science will feed the world. I was really inspired by this man, F. William Engdahl, and he really is one of the heroes who brought me along the path to understanding this big picture better. And his book is called Seeds of Destruction. And he's a German-American journalist who lives in Germany, and he footnoted every single line he has in this book, talking about the Green Revolution from the very beginning, that it was actually a plan to co-opt the seeds of the world and to co-opt the food supply and make people totally dependent on what the corporations could offer us. And unfortunately, much of it has come to fruition here in America because the people have been very trusting or maybe ignorant about this process that's gone on, and they've allowed it to happen because the corporations were promising that they would feed the world, they would reduce the amount of chemicals being used, they would increase yields, they would bring greater profits to the farmers. All these promises have not held true. And so we're seeing today that in Hawaii, since the probably the early 70s, but definitely since the early 90s, that these seed companies have taken over some of our most productive agricultural land, and they're using it for experimentation, not only of restricted use chemicals, but also seeds that they solely will profit from, and that are being subsidized by our federal government, and only allowing, let's say, limited information to come out about what they're doing. So this is quite terrible when you really look at it closely, because we always talk about transparency, sunshine law, but in fact it's not happening. And so what we're seeing today is that these chemical companies, when they came in the 1990s, got the advantage from the politicians to be able to have a tax-free status, to be declared a research zone, to have the support of politicians who were in key positions in committees in not only the councils, but also the state legislature. And they had their way with us. But again, because of the initiatives of many different groups, including Seeds of Truth, in the last only 6 years, we have been able to turn it around. So I'm not going to go so much into the details about the GMOs and the chemicals. I'm going to leave to Stephanie to do. But I'm going to talk again from a practical point of view as a healthcare professional, that I see people on a daily basis who are suffering from, you name it, diabetes, obesity, digestive problems, Crohn's disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. They've got it all. And I see this on a daily basis, and I tell them, do you want to change your diet? What are you eating? Are you drinking Diet Coke? Are you eating rainbow papaya? Are you eating chicken that's grown in this industrial way? What are you eating? And usually it comes down to that they are eating a lot of GMO and they're not aware of it. So as of only the last 2 years, I have begun to eat a lot more organic. Some people were doing this a long time, and Down to Earth has always been touting, the healthy lifestyle. But I've seen in the past 2 years that if I didn't switch my diet, then I was going to truly suffer. And I have grandnieces and grandnephews who are very sickly because of their diet, eating sugar, eating candy, drinking soda, eating junk food day in and day out because they really cannot afford something better, or so their parents think. Because organic food can become very affordable if the people mobilize behind it. And that's why the farmers markets have grown exponentially all over the United States. We're seeing young people who don't want to go into the corporate world becoming farmers. We see young kids who could become very rich lawyers, choosing instead to go into environmental law. And they are the ones that are going to lead the way for the future. And it sounds perhaps Pollyanna, but in fact, I think this is the reality of the direction that we're moving in. And it's very hopeful. Many people just throw up their hands and say, it's all over the place, so I'm just going to eat it and die, and die happy. But if you start paying your bill for your chemotherapy and your radiation, and you see that your relative ends up dying anyway, do you really think that's the solution? So we all really got to work together on this one. Like I chose to become a beekeeper. So I've only been a beekeeper for about 4 years, and I was able to get some beehives from my friends and start to pollinate the neighborhood. I thought chickens would be going a little bit too far, especially where I live. So I said, okay, bees that we can manage. So I asked the neighbors and they all agreed, yeah, let's have bees, you know, we love honey. So they've been very supportive in that way. And the bees have really done a great job pollinating the neighborhood. It's phenomenal. And in some of the talks that I do, I talk about bee colony collapse. And if any of you are interested, I do a talk with my spiritual organization, Suke Mahikari, about the bees condition. And also what are practical solutions that we can offer people to actually grow food and to start living healthy again. So these possibilities are all out there. And as I said, we're starting to grow farmers, we're starting to grow good politicians. So it's very hopeful for the future, and I hope to be a part of this. So, I want to ask you if you've heard of a place called Svalbard. Anybody know about Svalbard? It's a place off Norway. It's an area in Norway where a special seed vault has been built.
Doomsday
Some of you have heard it, yes? Okay. For those of you who have not heard of it, please go home tonight and Google Svalbard, S-V-A-L-B-A-R-D, or the Doomsday Seed Vault, right? And you will find that actually the government of Norway has funded, not entirely, but they have funded with the help of, guess who? Gates. Bill and Melinda Gates, who are the do-gooders of the century, but they have funded with millions of dollars to create this seed vault where millions of seeds are now being stored because they are anticipating some kind of world catastrophe. So there are other seed vaults throughout the world. They're in different countries and they're saving all the indigenous seeds or heirloom seeds that you can hardly even find out on the market anymore. And because laws are now being created to discourage people from saving seed, in fact making it criminal to save seeds from your backyard, that these seed vaults are being created really makes you wonder, what do they know that we don't know? So again, F. William Engdahl has written a great article in Global Research website about Svalbard. And he's gone into detail about the intention of these chemical companies. Again, not only to co-opt the food supply, take away the seeds from the farmers, create suicides in many different countries, take the lands away from the farmers, and create a society that's totally dependent on what these corporations offer to us to eat. So this is not a conspiracy, this is really happening. And so when you learn more about it, you will see that we have to become aware, we have to expose the lies that are being told to us about chemical companies and their intention to save the world. It's just the opposite. It's really to kill off the majority of the population and keep all the goodies for themselves. So I want to end, because the time is moving along. We could talk for a long time, but we'll save it for another time. That with all the discussion and all the controversy that's been going on, we've actually been given a gift. Because it has mobilized the people of Hawaii to question again, why was $8 million put on advertising on the statewide channels when actually it was a county initiative that only Maui could vote on? But the people here in Honolulu were asking us, hey, what's this GMO bill? How am I supposed to vote? You know, how come they're scaring everybody and saying they're all going to go to jail? And so that's why I think all of you are here today, because you're questioning, you're wondering, what is the truth? And so I'm not going to give you all the answers, but I do want to give you some hints. And so we're providing these materials here for you to take home and read. And please Google some of these things that I've proposed to you today, and find out the truth about what's really happening with GMO in Hawaii. So this gift that's been given to us is actually a wake-up call. And it's getting late. We probably are in the 11th hour, but we can turn it around. And if you have children, if you have grandchildren, these are the ones who will survive and be able to become the leaders of the future world, which will be a very wonderful place. So we all live here in Hawaii because we consider it a paradise. And we will see in our lifetime that it will be returned to paradise where GMO companies no longer desire to be here because we've made it so irritating for them to deal with us. Okay, so this gift to us has empowered us to speak, it's empowered us to act, and work in harmony with nature. So the scientists really believe that they are doing good for the world, but they are playing God, that's the bottom line. And none of us has the right to do it. So when we begin to work in harmony with nature and with God's laws, then the changes can come. And unfortunately, I forgot to have you offer the prayer, but perhaps you can do it afterwards, or all of you can say a prayer in our heart that maybe this will be realized in our lifetime. So just to conclude, some people were asking, what can we do about the GMO? What can we do about the Roundup we have in our bodies? So if you're taking notes, now's the time to take out the pen. Some ways to detoxify from GMO in your body are charcoal, sauerkraut. But you're going to have to do your own research as to the dosages. You know, I'm just giving you some hints here. So charcoal, sauerkraut. You know, the Germans had it right all along. So if sauerkraut works, probably kimchi is good too. Okay, have you heard about zeolite? Zeolite is a volcanic ash, and when you ingest it, it actually helps to detoxify your whole system. There's something called psyllium husk, you know, so if you're constipated, if you have problems with your gut, this is something that's very useful to clean you out. Organic sulfur, or MSM. Probiotics. Cascara sagrada, which is sacred bark. Wild burdock root. How many of you eat gobo? That turns out to be a very therapeutic herb, which can help to detoxify that Roundup from your body. There are other things, but I'm going to say that for another time. You need to get active, all of you. Whether you're going to get out and take your grandchildren to the farmers markets or take them out to the farms or the dairies, it's up to you what you're going to do. But you have to start by doing something yourself. Nobody else is going to do it. Our leaders are not going to do it for us. They are already compromised. So how many of you remember the Victory Gardens from the Second World War? Okay, some people do, yes? Central Union lawn was completely filled with gardens. And we're coming to a point in our life that we will see a natural disaster occur and we won't be prepared. So I really urge all of you to start buying heirloom seeds and heritage seeds, and we have a list there for links that you can buy heirloom seeds and heritage seeds from. You got to start growing stuff right now. Instead of having that beautiful garden that you're spraying with Roundup, it is time to grow food.
Yesterday.
Okay, next thing you need to be doing is reading labels. So I found the best way to lose weight is to go into the supermarket and pick up something, and like, let's say pie. I'm hungry for pie, okay? So I pick up the package and I look in the back and I read the label, and oh my God, it's got 30 things that are chemicals. It has nothing to do with flour or water or milk. It's chemicals. So I look at that and it looks pretty good, but it's nothing but chemicals, so I say, okay, I'm not going to buy that. And that's what you need to be doing. Labeling is not going to happen, I don't believe, for a while. There are companies like the non-GMO Project Verified that are actually working very, very hard to make you aware that GMO is not the way to go. So the USDA or organic label is no longer any guarantee that it is indeed organic, but it is still your safest bet rather than believing what the companies are telling you. So you got to shop at the farmers markets and support the local farmers. You need to be talking to your lawmakers about your concern, and I have seen Senator Russell Ruderman in the background there, right there, great guy, who is now the head of the Senate Committee of Agriculture. And he is really going to be supporting us. To watch out for those bills that propose that they're going to encourage farming, but in fact are only going to defend the GMO companies. So we need to get a buffer zone law passed. We need to disclose which chemicals are being used in our fields. And this man is going to be helping us. And there are many good people down at the legislature. So you don't want to go down there and scream in their face and make them your enemy, because they may listen, but they may also lose their office if you make it very clear to them that they are not being responsible. So the future is up to us. It's not up to the governor or the president or someone out there. It's all of you, and that's why you're here tonight. So I'd like to conclude my talk tonight with the following 3 quotes, which I hope will inspire each and every one of you to become activated, to have that button pushed and start to do something. So, let me just find the quotes. And we just marched in the Martin Luther King Day Parade on Monday, some of us, and that was a lot of fun. You know, if you've never marched been in a rally or been in a demonstration, I never did those things before because I was so scared, but it's fun. And so the next one we have, I really encourage all of you to join us. So we were in the Martin Luther King Day Parade, and this is a quote from him. "The time is always right to do what is right." That's pretty basic, but I'm sure you all can agree. Then Robert Swan has said, "The greatest danger to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it." And lastly, I love this one by Albert Einstein. "Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act." And that is all of you tonight.
I'd like to add another one. There's no such thing as an innocent bystander.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, that concludes my talk.